Marina, great to have you here. Great to have a chat.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Pleasure. Thank you for coming. And I wanted to ask you, I read that you lived in Ibiza for a while. What was the island for you? Like, what brought you there? And then I know that now you live in Berlin for now some years. What brought you out of Ibiza eventually to Berlin?
So what brought me to Ibiza at the time is I had just finished my studies in Rotterdam, and I randomly was looking at completely unrelated job opportunities that happened to be in Ibiza. And for some reason, I just spontaneously thought, I'm really tired of the weather here.
For some reasons.
Yeah, I don't know why. And it seemed really exciting to go somewhere where, would be completely music focused in the summer. And, at that point and at that age, it was incredibly exciting. So I just rolled with it. And then, I moved to Ibiza and I started working there, multiple jobs, mostly in events.
Music-related events.
Music-related events. So some at the time when Zoo Project was open at Benemusa Park, and I was working with events at Pasha, at Privilege. And then I ended up working a bit in artist management later on, a few years after. But, initially moving there, I felt like I was never going to leave. I was completely in love with the island. Like, obviously, it's got ridiculous natural beauty.
Yeah.
And, working in events there as well, like, there was a lot of access to party and after party. And at the time, I could do that. And it was all very inspiring and exciting. But I would say definitely after the second year there, I would say I started feeling a little bit less inspired with the music scene. I still felt and feel an attachment to the island itself. But I started seeing what a lot of people on the island are seeing, an increased focus on VIP culture. And you could really feel that shift on the dance floor, on the way clubs were somewhat being operated, the way clubs were being restructured. And I personally found that harder to connect to and feel inspired by. And I had made a few trips over to Berlin, both like on holiday and work related. And I just always said at some point I want to live in Berlin.
Got it. Yeah.
Because sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I felt this vast contrast.
Yeah.
I've suddenly entered this world which was strictly about music, no phones, and also like not even mirrors in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
I know those are simple details, but it's a huge contrast to what was club life for me working in the music scene in Ibiza.
Yeah.
And there's no judgment. It's just Berlin felt more like home to me, and I would come back with so much inspiration. So I kind of felt like that was something I needed to explore.
Yeah.
And then through the pandemic in Ibiza, I had a little bit of a hard time also with work, obviously. And a friend of mine who was living in Ibiza moved to Berlin, and a few months later was like, I have a free room in the apartment. Why don't you come try it out?
Damn.
And I came here to try it out.
Yeah.
And here I am 3 years later, still trying it out.
As it happens for many of us. Yeah.
It's working so far.
Yeah.
So.
Just a quick word before we go back to the interview. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the podcast. I'm Joseph, and this is the HoS Sound Studio. If you enjoy this content, please consider liking and commenting on this very episode, and also following us on the platform where you listen to or you watch the podcast, but also follow us on social media. If you have suggestions of guests that you really would like us to interview, see the link in the description. There's a form where you can submit suggestions for guests, and also if you have questions for them. Once again, thanks so much for watching and listening to the podcast. We love what we do. I hope to see you soon on a dance floor. Wow, very good to hear. And when you actually said, these two places are now in very big contrast, I so much relate to that. It's the coming from, I was a big fan of Ibiza. I went there for like many years in a row, every end of the summer to do the closing parties. And then every year kept getting more, let's say, the balance tilted toward VIP culture. So you would see like prices go up, and then you have this, it's like the attention feels like it was centered toward the bottle that comes to the table of the people there, instead of the dance floor, you know. And then you go to Berlin, where most places don't allow even photos to be taken. There is stickers on the phone. Some lineups are not announced. It's like the complete opposite, like of this, and like I can see how that attracted you. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about your inspiration, where you get inspiration from. You DJ, you produce, you work in music. You've been working in music for a long time. Where does your inspiration come from?
I'd say my core inspiration always comes from psychology and emotions and the way the mind works and the general internal human experience. I've always really been fascinated by psychology. I studied it for a little while. When I was younger, I used to just, like, in high school, I used to read books on case studies and stuff like that, just because I'm very naturally fascinated by it. So that brought into my current art kind of manifests itself as a desire for openness regarding mental health in our industry. So I try to channel that through my music, through my sets, through my general presence as much as possible. So, for example, some of my tracks, one of my tracks includes samples from an interview on a specific personality disorder that I've personally I was diagnosed with as a teenager. So that's BPD, borderline personality disorder. Because at the time I had traits. So, for example, for me, that process was really inspiring and also cathartic. Like, I remember doing research for the samples and feeling a lot of emotions come up. Kind of listening to this therapist talk about these labels and what the experience is like internally for someone. So I wanted to communicate that through a track. I also, some of the tracks I've released are, for example, PTSD. Another one I have unreleased is ADD, which is, I'm diagnosed with ADHD as well.
No, sorry, go ahead. I have another question, but I'll wait.
My general inspiration and my drive is to open the conversation through my music, even sometimes through my sets, and maybe sometimes I use samples over the sets, and I try to deliver like some messaging, because I feel like, I know I'm just one tiny person, but I feel like maybe I can be a channel for someone else struggling through something similar, not to feel weak, inferior, or alone. And that, in the big picture, drives me more than anything, because the more we normalize these conversations, the less people have to feel alone.
Exactly. And the loneliness part for me is like super important, because as humans, like sometimes we feel something, we don't quite know what that is. We feel something is wrong with us, with like us meaning the specific person, and we feel it's personal, like nobody else is feeling it. And it's one question I wanted to ask is that, does it ever happen to you that someone comes to you after listening to one of your tracks or sets and says, I so relate to what you are expressing, and you have a conversation about this?
I do get a lot of feedback about people feeling emotionally connected to my sets. Very oftentimes I notice that it's women, which I find really fascinating and beautiful, and Flinta people generally. Although I have had also a lot of men communicate that they felt emotionally provoked by the set, and they felt very open and free in connecting with themselves and expressing themselves. So I always see those as indicators that something's been communicated. I don't know if someone has specifically picked up through a set that I'm communicating about something specific, like a specific challenge. However, I've gotten feedback on tracks because, for example, when I released some of the tracks. I explained, or when some of the tracks were released, I explained the inspiration behind it. I wanted to be raw and candid with like, this process was also therapeutic for me, or I created this track because I have suffered with this disorder or this label, or this mental health challenge. And that's when I'll get feedback and someone saying, thank you so much. I really connected to this track for this reason. I really connect to the concept.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's the type of feedback, and those are the conversations that are opened. I think the most conversation I've gotten on like mindset and things I've wanted to communicate was, I spontaneously like felt this drive to create a reel, which I don't normally do, on Instagram. And I just felt this, this thing prodding me to make this reel, because I had heard about a lot of people around me not feeling like they can reach out for bookings, right? And then I kind of felt like I wanted to peel the onion down to like, what's the core issue? Why are such talented, amazing people around me feeling like they don't deserve the opportunity, feeling like they don't deserve the space and that they can't fight for it? And I kind of dialed that down to like, sometimes you just don't feel good enough.
Sure.
And why is that? And what's the psychology behind that, and how can you override that? And that's where I got really like a surprising amount of feedback and conversations opening, and I made myself available to that. I wanted to, if people were sending feedback or asking questions.
That's super important. Do you want to talk about it a bit more? Like, for example, the specific challenge that people might face, like you don't feel good enough to, like in these cases, to reach out to someone who can give you an opportunity to perform, or it can be releasing your music out, it can be anything, right? Can you tell me a bit more about the specific challenge and problem? I would love people to get more familiar to this and know more about this.
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone has a very different challenge, but what I see to be the case most of the time is like people are afraid, I think, not just of rejection, but of the effects of rejection. That like some of my close friends will be like, I'm like, okay, why don't you contact this person, say this and this, share this work of yours, like it's quite impressive, share this release, mention that. And they'll be like, okay, I'll try it, but if this doesn't work, I'm done. And I think it's because they're already doing something outside of their comfort zone, and if they get shut down, then they'll go back into that shell, let's say, because this industry, I feel like it requires you to be an extrovert, and not everyone's like that. And I think it's the nature of like a lot of people who are gravitating towards, say, music production. Sometimes that doesn't mean that they're going to want to constantly be in contact with people or put themselves out there in that way, you know? So that they might prefer to just keep expressing themselves through music, which, should be enough. But I think a lot of people just constantly have to push that barrier of like, it's the same with social media. It's very face forward and image focused because of the algorithm. And that's not everyone's nature.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's not everyone's nature to be like, hey, here I am, give me this opportunity. And it wasn't in my nature either. And the reason that I could kind of tune into the underlying issues that the people around me were facing was because I felt like I had been there. And and I'm still going through this process of fighting that. And I realized that the reason that I wasn't reaching out for opportunities confidently was because I didn't feel like I deserved the space. And I didn't feel, and it still comes down to like tangible and non-tangible things. Is it some core beliefs that I've grown up with? Has it been like the pressure to be perfect in everything? Has it been societal pressure placed on women and Flinta people? it can be a number of things, but I feel like at the core of like not feeling good enough, we need to evaluate, like, is this my mind being a parasite, or is it that I'm limiting myself and I'm allowing limiting beliefs to come in the way that might be external voices? Maybe they're not even my own. And I feel like I found a way to push past that even when
For
I
yourself.
feel uncomfortable. But it's something I'm still struggling with.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I don't know if I was clear enough. I think I spiraled a lot.
I think for me, I get it, and I wanna ask you another question about this. This is super interesting, and you feel like you've had to go through this challenge yourself. You found a way to navigate. Was your starting point to be an introvert, and you are in a world where you're getting more credit if you're an extrovert, right? That's kind of the broader music industry right now. Were you an introvert, or are you an introvert?
I would say I'm an extroverted introvert.
Okay.
I'm an only child as well, so I think I often need a lot of alone time to recharge, and I also desperately need connection to kind of fuel myself with energy, because I feed off of other people's energy. That's why, for example, I love DJing. But there are definitely times where I just need to withdraw. And, there are moments where I have to either be at events or engage in communication or play when maybe I'm not necessarily feeling that confident socially. Sure. Because I'm going through that, let's say, more closed off phase. And in all honesty, for me personally, it's very much linked to my hormonal cycle. So I'm getting more and more aware of that, but I can't always work with it.
No, because you don't control it, right? You might have the calendar is not aligned to your hormonal cycle.
Exactly, yeah.
And how did you navigate? Because you seem to be, first of all, you're very aware. You seem to have worked a lot on find a way to navigate challenging situations. How did you learn? What are the things that for you helped you?
I mean, I've learned through a lot of difficult experience as well. I think general inner work and therapy have definitely been huge tools and crutches for me. And oftentimes it's like really difficult periods that push you into that inner work, like heavy discomfort, let's say. And I definitely experienced that. And it's just like an ongoing process of learning how to work with my own mind. Because sometimes I feel like my mind works against me. So I'm learning more and more how to take distance from my mind and like just connect more with my gut and remind myself of why I'm here. Yeah.
I mean, I love this topic. So your mind, what is it, do you think? So let's think about how that manifests. For example, I don't know, you are creating a track, you're using your voice, and then you are considering to send it to a label that you particularly like. Is your mind then jumping in and saying, Marina, this is shit, don't do it? How does it work for you?
My mind tells me everything's shit.
Yeah.
By the way. At some point. Yeah. Of course, there are points where I'm in the flow and I'm free from my mind and I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. I do overthink, for sure. I do evaluate if, for example, the example that you're giving me, like, is this track going to be relevant at all for this label? You know, like, is it a match for their sound or potentially where they want to go? Because that could subjectively mark my track as shit to them, right? And yes, I think that you're asking me about like my voice being in it as being something slightly more vulnerable.
Yes, or you mentioned that you're, sometimes you want to listen more to your guts than to your mind, right?
Right.
Can you tell me more about what happens
in that process of signing a track, for example?
It could be anything that is relevant to you, that feels relevant to you.
I've developed this new process of tuning into my gut by like literally just closing my eyes, taking deep breaths and trying to feel into my body. Because over the last few years, I've really realized how my intuition is really like a superpower, but my mind clouds it, so I can't always connect to it. So I try to connect to my intuition, and like I actually ask my body sometimes. Like I'll ask myself a question, feel the vibration of my voice, hear my voice, and see how my body responds to it, how I feel. And that's more for decision making, I suppose.
Sure.
I know this sounds like really out there advice, but it's when I want to tune in. But for things like reaching out to a label, again, it goes back into my body, right? Like if the initial response was excitement, I'm like, okay, don't let these voices of like, oh, this isn't good enough.
Right.
What do I really have to lose? Am I scared of rejection? Personally, I think that being in this industry with the fear of rejection would be so counterproductive.
Yeah.
So on the one side, it's like managing this feeling within the body and giving that space. And on the other side, it's like putting something out there in the universe, whether it's like reaching out to someone for to listen to your demo, or reaching out to someone for a booking, and putting that out there without expectation. Because most of the times, like when I send something, I will send it and forget that I sent it and not expect an answer. And then when something comes back, it's like Christmas.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There are no expectations. And if it's a no, that's great, because you're not lingering and waiting.
Yeah.
It's great. You move on.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a really good approach, especially because you're trying to, in a way, beat the odds. And I always say this like to myself and to other people, like nobody will come to pick you up in your bedroom and say, hey, give me your music. You know, like if you don't send it out, if you don't expose yourself, if you don't get rejected to tons of times, like nothing is going to happen. And to me, like, I think what tends to happen, and for like in humans' mind, is that our fear tries to protect us from the potential rejection, because that feels like death, like it's a proxy to that.
So true.
And to do that, we then, like, the emotion is so strong that we mentally justify the 10 reasons why we should not send it. The music is not good enough,
true.
or it's not a good timing, or like we just get frozen and we're like, I'd rather not do that. It makes a lot of sense in our minds, although it's just fear that is leading to that.
It's primal, right?
It's very primal,
Yeah. And then you go back into this comfort zone, right? And you feel like, okay, there's no point in trying, and then your nervous system calms down. You're like, okay, I did the right thing. It's like, no.
Yes, exactly. And then it feels like you're doing the right, as you said, like you start building this neural path where you did the right thing, not taking any action to protect yourself from potential danger. Yeah. But then I think a lot of beautiful things come out of breaking through this fear. As you're saying, like you are doing that by listening to your guts. Like if I feel connected to this track, it feels great. Why should I not send it? Yeah.
And sometimes it's great to send it, get a no, and where possible, ask for feedback. You know?
Do you do that?
I do. Like when I send tracks over, I do, of course, like I thank whoever for listening, and I just say, if you have the time and would like to send feedback, I'm more than open to that. And I'm surprised how many like quite successful artists will come back with either very simple feedback of why they didn't connect to it personally, or even more constructive feedback. And I'm like, wow, people actually take the time for this. And, you know, these are people with very busy touring schedules, for example. And how beautiful, like the people are really kind, and, you know, you can benefit from this one way or another. And sometimes you'll get zero answer.
Sure.
And that's okay, because, people are busy.
And talking about demos or music, sending music to other people, do you follow up if you don't get any answer?
I don't always follow up. There are cases where I'll follow up if I think there's already been an indication of interest. Maybe I've had communication more personally or elsewhere. Or if there's a label that I'm really like convinced could be a great fit, I will follow up maybe a month later.
Sure.
But not always, no.
And in asking feedback, because that's something that someone really recently pointed out, that I should be doing that too. Like when I get a no, and the person answers and I have a good relationship with them, and they're like, no, not for me, not for the label right now. I think asking for feedback is a brilliant thing, and expecting that they might not ever answer, right? They might not have ever the time. What is a nice way to ask for feedback? Let's say you're sending the music to someone, they reply to you, cool music, not for me right now. No feedback, right? How do you go from there to receiving some more context?
So in my case, I ask for feedback the very first time I send the demos.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, and from there, some people send or not. I'm trying to remember if there's been a case of someone being like, just no, not for me, and not saying anything else. I think generally, like, people's communication I've had contact with is quite gentle. If they're saying that it's not for them, they'll say, I like this, but it's really not what I'm playing at the moment.
Yeah.
Keep sending, or maybe not. So in those cases, there are many artists that have not felt attached to some of my music. And then when I have something new, I'll send it, which I feel is more of a fit, because I'm also getting more and more an attuned sense of what they're wanting at the moment. And then maybe the second or third time, they'll find something that they do want. But I always ask for feedback in the beginning, and I do it in a respectful way of like, yeah, as I said, thank you so much for listening. If you have any feedback, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm open to it, whatever, you know.
Very cool. Yeah, brilliant suggestion. Yeah. And let's talk maybe about your creative process. Can you describe how you, I know that in another interview you talked about your music making being meditative for you. And so do you meditate overall?
Yeah, I do meditate. I meditate almost daily. I wish I could say daily, but I let certain things sometimes get in the way of my like morning practices, let's say. I've experimented a lot with meditation and tried to find ways that keep me on track, because as I mentioned, I also have ADHD, and I think for anyone, sometimes you get pulled away by thoughts about what needs to be done in the day or something random that happened yesterday. And in my case, I found meditating with mantras to be the most effective. So I try to do that every morning. In my case, it's specifically with Sanskrit mantras that kind of aim to connect me with divine power. And I call in creative intelligence, wisdom, creativity. And I feel like that allows me to start the day feeling more empowered and connected to myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing about meditation that helps me in my creative process, if say I'm stuck, or for example, even before going to a gig, I will take a few minutes to meditate, whether it's with mantras or not. Because what it does is it puts me into receiving mode. And when I'm in receiving mode, I feel like I can receive ideas. I can allow myself to be more spontaneous and let things flow through me, and hopefully enter flow state, which for me, at least, there's no formula for it. Sometimes it feels like it happens or it doesn't, but I feel like meditation can allow space for that more. Yeah. If I'm also open to it.
Yeah. So it does feed into your inspiration and creative practice, and also the rest of your life, because it helps you to be in receiving mode, also probably for everything, right?
Big time.
For people who don't know, we're not familiar with the definition of flow states. What is flow state for you, or in general?
For me, like the closest I've experienced to flow state is, for example, DJing, right? And in many cases, when I'm DJing, I'm thinking a lot still. Yeah. This is still attached to me. And like there are moments where I might be overthinking and planning. But in flow state, it really feels like you're channeling something bigger than yourself. You're channeling something that wants to be expressed in that moment. And there's hardly any thinking involved. You just know what to do. Like there are moments where I've seen my hand move, for example, on the equipment in ways that I hadn't seen before, reacting to things really quickly. And that's what I would define as flow state. It's when you don't necessarily need to think, and your creative energy is just flowing through you and expressing itself with ease.
Yeah, yeah. Very beautiful way to define it. And do you feel, for example, DJing, clearly you feel it? Does it happen often, like when you play, or does it happen very rarely?
It doesn't happen always. I'd say it's a 50-50.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Which is pretty good. I mean, 50. It's like 1 out of 2 gigs. You have it, it's great.
Maybe less than 50-50 then, when you put it that way. Yeah, I've thought about this so much. I've just been like, okay, what conditions need to be in place? What factors need to be in place? But you really can't control it because a lot of the factors are outside of your control, like the energy of the room, the mood of the people, the environment you're in, how your mental health has been the day and week before, how much rest you've gotten. Yeah. Big time. Thank you for acknowledging that. Yeah. So I wish I knew.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. Not easy to get there all the time. And we'll get into your production in a second, but broadly speaking, what has been one of the most unexpected and beautiful sources of inspiration for you so far?
I don't know if anyone would classify this as beautiful, but my creative juices and my inspiration is very much triggered by discomfort. So, and when I say discomfort, I would say like a form of discomfort in art and film. For example, surrealist art, where things look like they're somewhat real, but they're not. And there's something a little bit distorted about that. For example, like I was playing around with vintage BDSM samples that sounded really like perverted a little bit. There's this sweet spot of a feeling of discomfort and excitement that really draws me in, and I think that's more and more defining my sound as well, because those are the tracks that I'm really attracted to. Dissonant chords, there needs to be like a little bit of darkness, melancholy, but warmth at the same time. So it's that sweet spot of discomfort of like, I'm feeling uncomfortable in the warmest way. Like I'm feeling uncomfortable and sensual. Like, yes, it's a little bit dark, but there's something sexy about it at the same time.
Yeah. So physical discomfort as well, like pain, or a discomfort that can be also like mental situation.
Yeah, I should have specified that. I would say like emotional and mental mostly.
Yeah. Okay.
I find that really captivating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, for example, for something so that would manifest in something you read, you get exposed to, or something you actually actively seek, like you were talking about the vintage BDSM samples, something you seek for making music, for example.
Yeah, sometimes, or even sampling that I might choose to put over my sets. Sometimes I bring my Roland sampler with me and I play samples over the set just to kind of create more of a narrative, a consistent narrative. I did that once with, for example, I'm obsessed with I'm obsessed with the film Fight Club.
Oh yeah.
And that one also has that, you know, that level of discomfort of like something's off, and of course towards the end you understand why, but like that really sexy balance of discomfort.
Yeah.
So I had kind of included some samples from the film throughout the set.
Very cool.
Also because I found some of the messaging quite profound.
Incredibly profound. I mean, it's such a great movie.
It's a great film.
Yeah. It's a great film.
It's a great film.
Yeah. I'm still surprised to this day when I speak with someone and they never watched it. I'm like, what?
I recently had this conversation with another artist. I'm like, you need to watch that now.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And in your, for example, let's talk about, have you ever been heartbroken? Because that for me could be discomfort, right? So in a way that brings a lot of pain. Was that influencing you to make music in a way? Did that translate into music?
It translated into my artistic output, but in a different way. So, to be completely honest, when I was heartbroken, which wasn't too long ago, I think it was the first time I'd really experienced that type of emotional pain, even though I have suffered quite a bit of loss in my life. So I was just kind of taken aback by this like all-encompassing, heartache. It's a real thing. And to be honest, that for a while that shut me down. I think I experienced some form of like emotional burnout where I just felt like I couldn't do much of anything.
Yeah.
And on a practical side, I mean, for anyone living in Berlin, I think breaking up here is not great because like if you're moving around, your home base is gone until you find your next place. And on a practical level, that really got in the way of like me actually feeling like I have the tranquility to go back into making music and expressing myself. And maybe if I did, that I could have fueled it with this like insane, heavy emotional experience.
Yeah.
But what did translate was that there was a shift of like coming out of that heartbreak. I feel like when we experience these things, they can either eat away at our self-value, or they can make you go in the opposite direction.
To grow, for example.
To grow and also connect with your self-value despite this loss.
Yeah.
And in my case, that's what happened. And I feel like that was almost a gift that was given to me, but through one of the hardest periods of my life. And coming out of that with that determination and that connection to myself of like, I really know my self-worth.
Yeah, for sure.
That was so empowering. And then that started translating to my career as an artist. And I remember one of the first sets I played coming out of that. Somehow it was transmitted to the dance floor and it was very specific. And now you'll understand when I actually get to this. I had, after my set, 3 women came to me that were on the dance floor throughout. And they said that through my music, they felt connected to themselves and empowered as women. And I found that so fascinating and beautiful because I had been given this gift of like finding my own inner strength again, connecting to myself through this heartache, and I was able to transmit that and share it with other people. Yeah.
It's wonderful, and when people get it, and in a way, like, it's incredible.
So specific.
So specific, yes. What do you think is it? Because I've been thinking about that a lot. I think there's definitely something about, I'm sure there's someone that can give it very specific scientific explanation. Some people would say just casual. It just so happened that like 3 women came to you that night, so casually saying the same thing that actually was present in you. That's what they felt. I don't know. I think, there's something like, maybe it's not unexplainable, but do you have an explanation for that?
I don't have a full explanation. I mean, this has happened to me before. Like one of my earliest ever gigs when I was living back in Ibiza, I remember I was going through a hard time emotionally in a past relationship, and I remember going to that gig being like completely emotionally depleted. And after that gig, another woman had told me that like she was in tears during my set, and I had just been in tears before. And there's just, I feel like on the one hand it must be energetic as well, that maybe sensitive people can also pick up on what you're transmitting. But I think your inner experience also expresses itself to what you're attracted to. So what music I'm attracted to in that emotional state, what I'm choosing to play, how I'm choosing to play it.
Right. The expressions in your face, probably, how you move.
Maybe. I'm not aware of what expressions I make. Movement is definitely a big thing, for sure. But yeah, I think people are getting more and more sensitive. To be honest, to external energy. So that could definitely be something. And I would hope that my sets allow for intimacy somehow. Like that's oftentimes a huge vision and intention for me, that I'm really connecting with the people around me so I can stay attuned to their needs. So I think there's that level of intimacy and intention that goes into it that probably affects things. Yeah.
And then people read into that, and then some of them pick up in the energy. And they come and tell you, it's a great thing. Like, and I think as an artist, I think when something like that happens, it's magic.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. It's really like magic.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you've been given this gift. You're like, okay, I did something right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's impressive. And what does it mean to be an artist to you?
To me, it means channeling something bigger than yourself without needing to know the logical reason. Because I think being an artist is still a very challenging path. I would say sometimes it can feel masochistic. And you feel like there's just something driving you that's bigger than you, and you have to express something. There's something you have to do. You're a channel for something that, in my case, I feel can provide value to the world. And when we, move on to art, to me, the most incredible thing about any form of art is that it has this incredible capacity to transmute pain into beauty and something that other people can connect to. And I personally love being part of that. I love that I was able to tune into that calling, and being an artist is really just about kind of listening, I think, being attuned to, again, your gut.
Yeah.
And your gut is attuned, I think, to something bigger.
Have you read or come across the book by Rick Rubin, The Creative Act? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For me, one of the best books I've ever read. Like,
Absolutely.
It was incredible. And as similar to what you were saying, it talks a lot about this. About being able to listen and to get something that it's your interpretation always, but something that you can perceive from the world, the universe, and then put that out into the world.
100%.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful way. And I was reading one of your previous interviews. You said something about one of your artistic visions, at least back then, was to create a window of time for people to be comfortably lost. Is that something that still resonates with you, or what is your vision? Like, if you can describe like how you want your art to be performed, perceived, and how that your art would translate into the world, how does that look like? So
I'm laughing because I find the wording from past Marina really funny.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure like
yeah, I remember vaguely having said that somewhere, and I get it now, but I would definitely refine the wording. Basically, a huge part of my vision is really about allowing people to connect with themselves and embrace themselves. I think that's one of the main reasons I became obsessed with techno, because I felt like it allowed me to really like connect with the deepest side of myself, more than anything I had ever experienced. Therefore, I love being a vehicle through which people can just really let go and embrace themselves at the core. So therefore, like, it's just like with any relationship. In order for someone to open up to you, you need to hold the space. And I always aim to hold a safe space, whether it's throughout a night that I'm curating or my own DJ sets individually. I want to make sure that like every element makes sense and that it will enable that sense of safety, that people can really feel free to express themselves and be who and as they are. And the way that I can pick up on that happening usually is I notice it through the way people dance, and there are moments that I've gotten really emotional in the booth because there's a certain type of dancing I would almost classify as like with a childlike freedom. Yeah. And I can really spot that and feel it, and it fuels me. And then just like hearing people telling me that they felt so free and so happy and embracing themselves. And you talk about like these specific moments that might happen on the dance floor where you're playing. Does any of these moments from one of your gigs come to mind
Was there any previous gigs that you remember with a lot of joy because something like that happened?
I remember the first time I spotted it was that, let's say, like that type of specific joy was well over a year ago when I was playing at Bloom, which is a hypnotic techno event I'm a resident for, and at the time it was at Watergate. And I remember just the front row and like a very specific type of like free dancing and like arms in the air and like just a certain type of bounce. And I felt really intimate because like these people were very close to the booth. I feel it most times I'm playing at Trésor. I feel like the crowd there is so expressive. And also the last time I played there, which was end of December, I love when people like dance as close as possible to the cage, and I can just observe that movement over there. And I remember like over a week later, I got a like really long, heartfelt message from someone saying how much they felt free and happy and couldn't stop dancing throughout the night that I had curated, which meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And also like that they took the time to write such a detailed message, and that they picked up on the emotion through my set and that they felt it. So yeah, these are a few occasions very blessed with experiencing.
Yeah. And I think you're also blessed because you were attuned to it. I think I was just thinking about it now as you were talking about it, that I think probably one thing that, so definitely you're doing in a way like you're putting your best self, like your real self into the performances and the music and the events you curate. I think you're also attuned to it and you pick up. Like, I'm pretty sure that if you talk with other artists who are playing a lot, they get these messages from Instagram. They're like, thanks, man. You know, they might just answer as they might not be as attuned to picking up on the feedback that they get from people, which again is a gift in itself, right? Because then you enjoy more the experience, resonates with you. Yeah.
I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only way that I know. So.
Yeah, for sure. And so the events you're curating, for example, you do a lot of Trésor. How has this experience changed you, inspired you? What was something unexpected you have learned throughout this experience and journey?
Something really valuable I learned through it, going back to, let's say, instincts, right, is I developed my own process very heavily based on my instincts when it came to bookings and curation. And I have to say that like 95% of the time I was on point. First of all, it was just so humbling to be in a position where I could give other artists this platform at such a incredible institution. And I knew what that meant. So I was very, I took the responsibility seriously of like who I really wanted to give that opportunity to, and who could, together with the other artists, like deliver that vision that I always had for these nights and still have for anything I work on, of delivering an experience of safety for everyone that comes inside. And that comes down to their musical direction, their passion, their vision, their sound, and also their energy.
Yep.
So my process, for example, developed with, I noticed that beyond like looking into the basic requirements, because New Faces has specific requirements, they're really about pushing up and coming artists, which is incredible, regardless of following, releases, nothing.
Yeah, it's great.
It needs to be limited experience, right? Because this is also how you cultivate the scene.
Yeah.
You give these people these opportunities, they grow. So I would start out by, for example, if I found someone through their music as a producer, or I had met someone, or someone sent me a message, if I had my eye on an artist, I would take the time to interact with them first. And
before the gig, before booking them.
Before booking them, yeah, just on a very simple basis, just to kind of get a feel for the person behind the music. And there are many cases where some of the artists, let's say, were more production focused and hadn't played many gigs, which maybe like if I was working with my head, like this could be a risk. This is someone who's never played a club gig, for example, right? But as a producer, they're phenomenal. But through like short interactions and feeling out the person behind the music, like I said, you get to know which person, if you match them with the right opportunity, will rise to the occasion, push their own boundaries, and grow as an artist, and also like blow everyone's minds.
Yeah.
And there were many cases where I felt like this person's work ethic is going to match and even outweigh the opportunity.
Sure.
And it was really beautiful to see that happen, and also to see these people's careers kind of grow past those performances.
Yeah.
So for me, like, it was just a really beautiful learning opportunity, developing my own process and also my process for the nights and my rituals and everything, and what I would do with the artist beforehand and everything, you know.
Yeah, really good. And also, as you're saying, like, this matters and like supports people, sometimes pushes them, and then it's like a good stepping stone for them to continue their path. Yeah.
And people like sometimes people just need a freaking opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you for doing that for many others. It's important.
It was really humbling, really. Like, and again, it's because I had the opportunity to work with Trésor.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they do have this, they embody this vision of really cultivating the scene, because this is how you allow artists to grow. This is how you feel like the next generation of music as well. Yeah.
How did the opportunity come for you to be able to be one of the hosts on New Faces?
So this was about 6 months in after I moved to Berlin. And at the time I had someone who was like informally handling my artist management, a friend. And she got an email in from the booker of Trésor asking if I would be interested in hosting a New Faces night. And I still don't know exactly how I was found or how that happened. I'm very grateful. So it was, to me, on the other side, completely random. And then after a series of nights that year, so like the first one, there was no guarantee that there was going to be another one. I obviously put all my energy into that, and I hoped that it was going to go well. Then I got offered another date, and then another. And so the first year, let's say, was like that, with no notion of a repetition. Yeah. And then at the end of that year, I was asked to join on in the following year as a resident host, and then I was given all my dates for the year.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's been amazing.
Yeah. It's great thing. Like, it's always like by accident, but in the end you were in the right place. You actually did also the work to do it, and then there's a reason why they confirmed you and they kept giving you the opportunity. Yeah,
I mean, this, I don't know, is highly imposter syndrome driven. It's like not remembering why I'm here, you know.
Yeah. But again, this goes back to what we were saying before. Like, sometimes, of course, your mind is like, oh shit, you know, it must be a mistake.
And then it happens again. It's like, maybe it's not a mistake, but maybe it still is, you know.
It's such an interesting topic, and understanding how our minds work or work against us sometimes.
I think the latter is a great point.
What's your definition of success in life? It doesn't have to be just music.
I think my definition of success in, let's say, my musical career is very much linked to my vision, like feeling like I've been able to provide value and be part of something, as I said, bigger than me. Being able to support people's lives and journeys, being able to empower people, I think, through any of my projects, through my music, my sets, releases anything that I do. I feel like if I've attained something where I've actually like fed back into the community, I would see that as success. Then like another, I would say more ego-driven answer would be respect has always been a huge one for me. I think so. Respect from my peers and other people in this industry that I look up to, for me and my ego would be a mark of success as well, and really fuels me. Like it really means a lot when, say, someone I really look up to plays my music or has left really great feedback on a track, or I share the lineup with them and I get nice feedback, and they're small things, but like I think the more and more that happens, I feel like that's a marker of success because I'm doing something right, also taking in inspiration from them. And then I guess on a practical level, no, I'm going to drop the practical level. We'll leave it there.
Perfect. For example, how can artists that are non-male shield themselves from sexist comments?
On the one hand, I don't know that they can completely, because I feel like it's something that unfortunately is still happening and will still happen. However, easier said than done, of course. But it's important to always remember what's your shit and what's theirs. And when it comes down to sexist comments or anything disrespectful, try to remind yourself, is this me? Or is it their insecurity, their inferiority complex, their ignorance, their lack of education, their traumas, their limitations, the shit that they've grown up with, what they've been taught?
Yeah.
Again, I say easier said than done because, yes, I know that I sometimes like have these looming thoughts in my head as a result. And I'm a bisexual woman, cis woman. However, when we go into like trans artists and the kind of difficulties they face and the comments they face, then where they sometimes have to, you know, it translates into worrying about their safety. You know, I can't necessarily say like, oh, you know, remember to separate their shit from yours. But at its core, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to lack of consciousness, lack of education, and a huge amount of insecurity, I think. So sometimes trying to remember that separation, and definitely leaning on each other for support. Like, being able to share the burden with others in our community.
And have you seen good examples of, in, let's call it our scene, so let's say techno, or broadly speaking electronic music, club music, have you seen good examples of people that either can protect, can help others, can support others, or they can shield themselves effectively from comments that can be sexist or misogynist?
I can't think of very specific examples that come to mind. That's not to say that it's not happening. What I can say is that I personally know a lot of, let's say, cis men in this industry who are incredibly supportive and conscious, and I think that if they heard of any sexist comments, they would shut them down as well, and that whether they're bookers or artists or artist managers, I feel like they support making space for Flinta artists in the scene. I know that we're definitely not there yet. We're definitely not in a place where we're seeing balance. But I know a lot of promoters, for example, that want to make sure that space is protected. I think. So
and I think again, I think sometimes also my view is skewed because I think we're in a good place, but also because we live in a bubble. Like, we live in a very lucky bubble in Berlin where we talk about these things, people act on it, and we're kind of in our niche. I go back to Italy, where I'm from. Very different story.
I get what you mean.
Yeah. It's tough. I think there's a lot of still a lot of work that we need to do. We need to continue doing.
I think even in Greece, where I'm from, there's quite similarity in these cultural approaches, and again, quite patriarchal cultures, right?
Yes, very still in the culture, and very hard to break and change. Yeah, if at all.
I would even say like they're still heavily burdened by toxic masculinity.
Yeah,
so that's heavy for everyone involved.
Yeah, it is,
including the people making sexist comments.
Yeah, it is. But I think what we're doing, I mean, there's a lot of people who are doing that, and I think it's if everybody takes responsibility and owns it, and we understand how to navigate this, I think we can support each other, as I said before, into a better place. I think
it's so important to remember that, to really remember that we can call out for help.
Yeah,
I'm seeing that more and more with with some female artists that I've grown to be quite close with that struggle with very, very similar things that I do, and they might start out by reaching out to me for help during a panic situation, and then I remember like, wow, this is so beautiful to like be able to assist by being on the other side. My experience was worth it, and then it reminds me like, oh, I can also reach out to her when this happens, and we can compare notes on how difficult this is, and then by sharing it, it's less difficult.
It's true. Similar to what also we were saying before about fears, like understanding that we're not alone in the journey, and like we're not the only person feeling this, and we can ask and get support. Super important.
Yeah, so important.
Yeah, Marina, this has been a great pleasure. Let's go toward the wrap up. I have some questions that's they're going to be like rapid questions, so just answer with everything that comes to mind. What drives you in life?
The same things that drive me in music, which are meaning and connection.
And if you were to choose one closing track for the rest of your life, what would that be and why?
Eclipse by Trevino.
Eclipse by Trevino, okay.
Yeah, it was released on Clockworks in like, I think 2015.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
It's that track every single time I hear it, like I feel goosebumps. Wow. It's so emotive yet powerful. The strings are just they literally pierce your heart. And yeah, I think I've only played it once as a closing track, and definitely it's no brainer.
Yeah, I gotta check it out as well. And if you think about what got you into making music, what are one or two tracks that prompted you to enter this journey?
I remember one track, which was also my first ever reference, let's say, and it's not a track I think many people know. It was a track called Karlek by DJ Lily, who, if I'm not mistaken, is a Gothenburg-based artist. And I can send you a link for it.
Yes,
I don't
please.
think it's even on Spotify.
Wow.
But it's very cinematic, and it has this whispered conversation going on that touches on that discomfort I mentioned earlier, that very seductive discomfort.
Really?
I was like, ooh, I'd really like to create something like this.
Yeah. Wow, so interesting. I have to check it out. I love vocals. I love especially whispering, and it feels like my kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you were to choose between playing in front of 10,000 people that you don't know, massive stage, or 20 close friends, what would you choose and why?
That's a tricky one because I tend to feel less nervous with more people. Like the more the merrier. However, having the energy of my people around me is very valuable and translates to my performance. So maybe the latter, but that's a tough one. Yeah.
And if you, let's say you're stuck on a deserted island with, you can choose one person. Has to be an artist, but can be a musician or other kind of artist. Who would you choose and why? Dead or alive?
Damn. David Bowie.
David Bowie, okay.
Big time.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Inspiration, like what would you talk about with David?
What I always found fascinating about him is that, because I had watched several documentaries, but he mentioned how he actually hated performing.
Wow.
And I think he's one of the most incredible, impactful, emotive, raw performers of all time. And I'd really love to understand that process of like shaking that feeling off and stepping into that role. And you know, like he had so many different personas, right, as an artist, and channeled so many different energies. I would be really fascinated to learn more about that.
Yeah. I need to look it up as well. Yeah, I didn't know that he hated performing.
Yeah, me neither.
Such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from what I understood, he was actually quite internally shy.
Wow.
Beautiful human being.
Yeah. And regarding your next projects, what is one project that is current or future that you're particularly excited about?
Having come to the end of like my New Faces curations last year, I'm really excited that this year I'm commencing a DJ residency with Trésor.
Wow, congrats.
Thank you. So so this year I'm going to be a local resident.
Very cool.
And my first date is end of February. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
It's going to be a great thing.
Thanks.
Yeah. And we have a closing tradition, which is, what's one question we should ask the next guest without knowing who they're going to be?
So should this be a new question or something that maybe you've already asked that I find impactful?
Up to you. Yeah, whatever you think.
I mean, it's always interesting to know what gets people's creative juices flowing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that'd be a question, yeah.
Okay, great. There's a question for you, as you can imagine. It's a tough one, actually. How to make the world a better place tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Easy question.
Tomorrow. I think I think this might be a little bit of a cliche answer, but I think it comes down to like starting with ourselves. And for example, if everyone acted out of empathy and out of understanding how we're connected, I don't think such horrible things would be happening in the world.
Empathy, yeah.
Yeah, empathy, seeing yourself in the other human being, trying to understand what their experience might be like. Imagine like everyone thinking that way and acting out of consciousness.
Yeah, I do believe so too.
Yeah. Maybe it's idealistic, but I mean, it's for tomorrow.
It's for tomorrow. We have time. Marina, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better and also to have this chat.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
Yeah.
Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
you.